I'm Melissa, and this is The Book Break. And today I'm really excited to talk with the author of the new book, The Rose Bargain, Sasha Peyton Smith. And you know what? We're jumping right in.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, I'm excited. So, for those out there, we meet with people all over the world, and Sasha and I happen to be in the same state right now, which these days is rare. So, yay for that.
Neighbors.
So, Sasha, let's just jump in your book. Tell us more about this.
So The Rose Bargain is my new YA YA romantasy. It is about an alternate history England where the queen is a fairy who tricked her way onto the throne 400 years earlier. So now it's the mid 1800s, and all of the upper crust high society girls are expected to go make bargains with her to help them find husbands. Think a talent for piano in exchange for a toe, or a prettier nose in exchange for your happiest childhood memory. The queen shocks the town when she announces that this is the season that her son, the fairy prince, will take a wife. Ivy Benton, our main character, has been recently disgraced by her sister's scandal, and so she is the first person to sign up in blood, thinking that no one else will take her. But she's quickly drawn into a political plot by the prince's brother, who wants to use Ivy to take down the queen. And torn between these two royal brothers, she finds herself falling for the one she shouldn't be.
That's awesome. So, romantasy, some say it's kind of a newer genre, but it's, for those that aren't super familiar with that phrase, it is fantasy and romance combined. And, I feel like maybe some people are like, oh, I don't know if that's me, but it's really, if you like fantasy, you'll like this. If you like romance, you'll like this, right? So tell us a little bit more about how did you decide this was your niche genre?
Yeah, so my first book series is kind of more of a classical historical fantasy, but what I loved most about writing that book was the romantic subplot. And so I knew I wanted my next book to focus more on romance. And I think the difference between a romantasy and a, fantasy book with romance is that if you take the romance plot out of a fantasy, it stands on its own. But if you take the romance plot out of a romantasy, the whole thing kind of crumbles like a sandcastle. And I knew I wanted to write something with romance that was that central and load bearing to the plot, where, the main stakes were, do these two people fall in love? Even beyond this backdrop of fairy queens and political plots and, these really exciting, world building things that are going on. I wanted Ivy and her love story to be at the heart of this book. So I like romantasy as a term. I know it can be kind of controversial. To me, I just think it's, I think that there's a lot of books being published, and it just helps people identify the kind of books they want to read more quickly. For me, I love a book that has romance in it. And so anything that can guide readers to the right type of book, I think is helpful. And I have no problem with the term romantasy. I welcome it.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's really fun. And I won't give the spoilers because I've read the book all the way to the end, so I know the spoilers. But I'll say there are some twists and turns in this book too, right?
There is quite an explosive ending to this book. So I apologize in advance for the bit of a cliffhanger it ends on. I will tell you, I have finished the first draft of the second book. So you will not have to wait too terribly long. It'll probably be out about, winter, spring of next year, of 2026. I originally really wanted to write a standalone after writing my last series. And then the idea for the Rose Bargain came to me. And I wrote the plot and what was going to happen. And I went, oh no, it's 2 books. And oh no, I know exactly where the first one ends.
Yeah. But I got to say, for our viewers, if you're like, oh no, I hate cliffhangers, I have to wait. You don't have to wait. You do get some resolution, right? Yeah. So you don't have to wait, because I know there's sometimes people that are like, okay, well, I'll just wait till book 2 is out. Don't wait till book 2 is out. You need to read book 1 first, and then you get that extra suspense, right?
Yeah. I mean, I will say questions are answered in book 1. It's not one of those things where absolutely everything is left hanging. You do get the answers to some mysteries, but as to what happens to Ivy next, you will have to wait for book 2.
Yes. And, that's okay. That's okay if we have to wait a little bit, but we already know that the draft is written and it's coming. So that's awesome. And so, Sasha, obviously, this isn't your first book. And so you've written a couple others. Give me just a quick little snippet about your other books.
Yeah, so I have 2 other books out, The Witch Haven and The Witch Hunt. It is a complete duology. So if you really only want to read a complete series, I have one for you too. We've got it all here at Sasha Peyton Smith Inc. Yeah, so it's called The Witch Haven and The Witch Hunt. It is a historical fantasy about a school for witches disguised as a tuberculosis sanitarium in 1911 New York. So it's a little bit grittier than The Rose Bargain. It takes place, in the kind of underworld, the crime world of turn of the century New York, and it follows a young seamstress who finds out she has magical powers. And again, it's complete. So if you want to read it, it's out now.
Awesome. And then you are engaged with your readers. I've got up on our screen right now your website and then also your Instagram. And so tell us a little bit about some of the fun things they're going to be able to see on that, because sometimes we like a little peek behind the curtain.
Oh my gosh, of course. Yeah. If you want to peek behind the curtain, the place to follow me is my Instagram. I try to keep it updated with my life and my writing and my travels. I've been doing a lot of research travel for book 2 of The Rose Bargain. I was in Bath last spring, and I'm going back to England next week, where I will surely do some more research. I'm really excited about that. And then my website has all of the usual information about, signed copies and tours. It has content warnings, and it also has a place to sign up for my newsletter, which is where you will get all of the best behind the scenes peeks of my process of writing the sequel.
That's awesome. And, one thing I want to mention in here, because I think this is really great, is you talk a little bit in this book about an LGBTQ plus relationship, and you do it so well. And I just think you do a great job. And I'd like to hear a little bit from you on how you were able to, honestly, you did a great job with it. Tell us a little bit more about that, especially in a world in the 1800s, England. That's kind of different.
Yeah, it's, I always want my books to reflect the diversity that I have in my real life. In my real life, I have a lot of queer friends and family members. I have a lot of friends and family who aren't white. And so it would feel disingenuous to write a book where everybody looked and acted exactly like me, because that's not the world that I live in. And so when I was writing this fantasy, England, I wanted to make sure that Ivy's world was populated with, a diverse group of people, because that's how life is. I remember I once went to a writing seminar, and it was a lecture by Daniel Jose Older, and he was talking about creating fantasy worlds. And he said something along the lines, if you're making up a world, why would you put racism in it? And if the answer is you want to, explore racism, then you have to have a real answer for why that is. And it really stuck with me. And so as I'm creating, this fantasy England, of course, racism and imperialism was a massive part of Victorian England. And when I did my world building, I decided that, my fairy run Victorian England would look a little different. And so the offer that the fairy queen gives these girls is, if you are not selected to marry the prince, then you will never marry another. You are off the marriage mart. And I thought that might be a pretty attractive offer to a girl who might not want to be saddled into marriage with a man.
Yeah. And I also really like that you also mentioned in this, for some of those girls that took that offer, is some of them didn't want to be defined by their husbands and wanted to be able to explore a life of their choosing. And, that wasn't necessarily an option that we're aware of in 1800 English communities, but you show that those, even though we didn't necessarily see that in history, that didn't mean it didn't exist. Women had these thoughts. We wanted to have lives that we could choose. See, I'm from the 1800s, but it's, I think that was really important and a great piece that you brought into there. So it's great.
Yeah. Women have always wanted to, be the masters of their fate and the determiners of their own lives. And whether or not they had the social or political or financial freedom to do so, women have always been contributing to industry and art and society, even if their efforts went unrecognized.
Yeah. And I really like that you had not just female characters recognizing this, but male characters as well. So for those viewers, if you haven't figured this out yet, I really like The Rose Bargain. You need to go pick it up. And Sasha, thank you so much for being with us, and to our viewers, we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.